Hello, Namaskaram. Even though we are miles apart, it's so good to be among you, and thanks for inviting me to this conference. I'm Rani Vajravelu. I'm a teaching faculty member at the University of Central Florida, Orlando, USA. My knowledge on this topic is derived from my training in plant taxonomy, years of fieldwork, interaction with experts in this field, and teaching ethnobotany and medical botany to thousands of students who have taken up careers in medicine, veterinary science, and pharmacy. With this introduction, I'm going to move on to the topic, pharmacognosy and phytochemistry of American indigenous plants. For the sake of students who may be at this conference, I want to briefly go over these three terminologies. Pharmacognosy is the study of crude drugs, as we all know. Recently, pharmacognosy also encompasses preservation of endangered medicinal plants. So when crude drugs are derived from medicinal plants, they are likely to contain a mix of chemical compounds. When they are administered in the body, internally or externally, the phytochemicals may work individually or in combination. Let's look at an example. Let me take a plant that we all know, aloe. Aloe is well known for skin conditions. Even though it is a plant originally from Madagascar Islands, it's all over the world. So when we take the leaf and break it, there is a gel sticky substance, which is actually a combination of latex, gel, and many different chemical compounds. Salicylic acid, aloin, sterols, all of that. So when we apply it on, let's say, a wounded skin or a burn, they act as antiseptic agents, anti-inflammatory agents, and also as an excellent moisturizer. So this is a good example of how a crude drug can act in a synergistic way. Different chemicals working on one purpose, healing the skin condition. Unfortunately, it's not the case for all other crude drugs. For example, elderberry. Elderberry is a plant very common in somewhat tropical and subtropical areas of the United States. Also, it's found in Europe. I have seen them all the way to in Netherlands. So this elderberry, there are many species, of course. They have tiny little fruits. The fruits are edible, but not the fruit stalk or the flower stalk, what we call as the pedicel. So when somebody is making formulation out of it, usually taken in the form of an infusion in herbal remedy, one has to be extremely careful in not including the stalks of the flower. But the flowers are safe. That's where the medical compounds are. So this infusion is usually taken to treat respiratory conditions, like including bronchitis, even cold and associated symptoms. It's well known for treating virus conditions. So we have seen two different examples, and please understand, not all plants are the same, not all chemicals are the same, not all crude drugs are the same. That's why pharmaceutical companies prepare them in different forms of administration, either injectable form or pill, tablet, cream, inhalers, things like that. So the biologically active compounds are phytochemicals. When phytochemicals are formulated into drugs, they are called phytopharmaceuticals. So let's see some of these phytochemicals and their applications in phytomedicines as phytomedicine compounds. Let me show you a chart. Phytomedicines, this for our convenience, we can classify them. One as used in traditional medicine and the other as used in allopathy medicine. When you think of traditional medicine, there are herbal medicines and medicines used as health supplements, or phytochemicals used as health supplements, and food as medicine. Milk thistle, used in enhancing liver health, is an example of herbal medicine. Ginkgo, used for memory enhancement, could be an example for using it as a health supplement. When we eat colorful vegetables and fruits, take green tea and ginger in cooked foods, we are talking about taking food as medicine. Over 25% of the prescription drugs in the United States derive from phytochemicals, and even more synthetic drugs have a basis in active principles in plants. So about 75% of plant-derived phytochemical medicines are pharmaceutical medicines. Actually, they directly correlate with the medicinal uses by the native tribes. So incorporating traditional medicine into the healthcare system is one of the responsibilities taken up by the World Health Organization. So going to the next slide. Phytochemicals can be broadly classified as two categories: primary metabolites that include carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, and of course nucleic acids that we are not including because we are talking about phytochemicals in medicine. To give example for each type, sorbitol, a sweetener, glutathione, a compound we may get when we eat healthy vegetables and fruits, primrose oil derived from the seeds of evening primrose plant used in arthritis treatment. Secondary metabolites, also known as natural products, actually are the major group of compounds used in pharmaceutical products. Sterols, phenols, tannins, and alkaloids. Alkaloids alone is a huge group, more than 7,000 different alkaloids. So this is just a handful of examples. So phytochemicals in allopathy. I just picked a few plants, not really plants, the chemicals, phytochemicals derived from plants. Each one of them, of course, are incorporated into pharmaceuticals products, either as whole or as a derivative. Or a chemical structure of this is derived or copied into a semi-synthetic compound. Quinine, quinidine, paclitaxel, coumarins, capsaicin, some may be familiar to you already, lobeline, cocaine, diasgenin, ametin. Just a handful. Of course, that will be the main part of our presentation as we move on. So to put the context of our topic into the location, you can see it's a huge area. North America, South America, and Central America connecting in between. So I'll be picking examples, plant examples from these regions, but they'll be widespread. For example, I'll be talking about a plant from this region, and I'll be talking about an example from this region, and there will be one from here, and of course there will be one from here, one or two from here. So this is due to the time constraints, I'm just picking only a few plants, and let's move on with the rest of the presentation. Here is an approach to learning the traditional American healing practices. Like in many ancient tribes, there is an indigenous healer. or known as shaman, also known as the medicine man, a person who is highly respected by the local tribal community. Shaman tries to address both the physical and spiritual dimensions of the disease. So there are rituals and ceremonies involved along with this. And that's how the native Indians or Native American Indians have approached the medical practices. So only this medicine man would know where the plants are and which part of the plant to use and how to prepare it. Is it a tea or a paste, or should this be taken inside on an empty stomach or with meals? All of that only the medicine man would know the details because he was experienced. And not only that, the knowledge probably came from his ancestors. So that's how he acquired that knowledge. So the rest of the Americas, especially the northern part, central North America, the medicinal plants are still viewed with skepticism, but there is a renaissance in recent years, and many still think of them as nutritional supplement. Here are some of the works that form the basis for our knowledge on American traditional medicine. And there are some works still undergoing. Starting from the first one, Bediana's manuscript is an important source. It is printed and still in use. 90% of the plants listed in this manuscript, written by a physician and originally written in Aztec language, but later on translated to Latin, is still in use in Mexico. Anastasis Cortesis peruviae is an European who wrote about the Native American medicinal plants, especially from Central and South America. He describes a Cinchona very much in detail. Of course, early pioneers adopted many tribal practices, and then in somewhat recent times, Samuel Thompson worked on some of the plants we may not even think of them as medicines, like chili pepper, Indian tobacco. Indian tobacco is not the India like Asian Indian, it's American Indian tobacco, and it's not even a tobacco. Nothing to do with the tobacco plant at all. Richard Schultes lived in Amazon tribes, along with them, native people, for more than half of his lifetime. He became an authority on medicinal and hallucinogenic plants of the Amazon. He is known as the father of modern ethnobotany. And we have Mark Plotkin, Michael Balick, and Edmund Waits, who are all students of Dr. Richard Schultes. And everybody is contributing to the conservation and ethnobotanical works in Central South America and outside of the United States as well. James Duke is well known for his works in ethnobotany, and he works along with the pharmacists and physicians. So he's conducting a series of demonstrations and talks on pharmacy from the rainforest. So here is a list of medicinal plants of American origin. Again, it's just a sample. If we were to talk about all the plants, we will need not just an hour, maybe a lifetime. So Peruvian bark, we are going to talk about this in today's presentation. Curare, and then May apple, cayenne pepper, and wild yam. All others are listed, and they're all from this geographical area. So move on to Chondrodendron tomentosum. This plant is found in Ecuador, Peru, Brazil, Bolivia, Colombia, and some Caribbean islands. And the unique use of this plant is in making a dark syrupy paste, what they called as curare. Curare, it also has some local names, urari and many other things. Native tribes used it. First of all, to understand the plant, the tomentosum is based on soft, velvety white hairs or pubescence found on the undersurface of the leaf. Chondrodendron, dendron means tree, chondro has something to do with the cartilage. So there are some studies, and native people have used this plant chemicals or plant extracts or paste to treat some of the broken sprains or broken ligaments or ankles and things like that. So chondrodendron. But the use we are going to talk about is about an important phytochemical and how it is applied in medicine even today. The plant we are talking about is what I have just marked, not the tree, but the woody climbing plant, which is in botany we call it lion. Such a huge climbing plant can reach up to 100 meters tall. Such a huge plant found in rainforests was used by native tribes to make a curare. So what is the reason and what is the function and purpose of the curare? Look at this collection of some holder made of bamboo and some pointed arrow with the sharp tip. So these pointed arrows were dipped in the dark syrupy paste made of different ingredients, mainly the crushed stems of this plant and also roots of this curare plant or Chondrodendron tomentosum. So once the pointed arrows are aimed at an animal for the purpose of hunting for their food, usually these animals are perched high on the tree branches. So as soon as the poison hits their bloodstream, the animal loses its sensitivity, becomes paralyzed, even though it may be still living, loses its grip from the branch and it will fall off. That's how they were hunting the animals. Sometimes they would even aim at an intruder to the community, a human. If they realized the person was not actually coming there to cause trouble, but to make friendship, they can reverse this effect. So that is the science behind using curare. So as we move on, so now we know the chemicals that caused this paralytic effect on animals and humans is based on these two, the chemicals curarin and tubocurarin, that came on later on after isolating the compounds and studying and researching on them. So the bark juices contain alkaloids. Now, the administration in modern medicine is based on the paralytic effect of this chemical. That means it's going to relax the muscle and stop the muscle from beating. That is what is required in a hospital surgery room, like an open heart surgery. They have to stop the beating heart, for example. So for that, this phytochemical or its derivative in a pharmaceutical medicine form can be applied locally just to paralyze that organ. And this will be done under the supervision of a trained physician who knows exactly how much to apply, in what proportion, and where. And also, as they do the surgery, of course, there is someone who is monitoring the breathing or trying to artificially keep the breathing going on, so it doesn't affect the patient. There is a Southeast Asian counterpart for this plant, that is Trichonas nux vomica. Many of you may know this plant already. That is from Southeast Asia. Even within the United States, and the rest of the Americas, South and Central Americas, there are Strychnos species like Strychnos toxifera that is another counterpart of this curare plant, also used as a curare plant. The next plant is Cinchona officinalis. Natives have called this as quina quina, meaning bark, because bark of a tree, because the bark was the source of the chemical compounds. So in native tribal language, they called it bark. This plant is common in the northern part of South America, including Peru. So there is another species, they call it Peruvian bark, red bark. All of these are names for the different species of Cinchona. Officinalis is what we are talking about. This is the species we are referring, but all other related species have the same properties. So the bark was used in making tea, herbal teas, and even in modern times, they are used to treat digestive issues and loss of appetite. So this plant was unknown outside of the tribal communities. It was a well-kept secret. The secret was that this tea can cure very high fever and associated with the chills. This is the same symptom people experience when they suffer from malaria. So how did the knowledge get outside of the tribal community? I'm so sorry about that notification. It's not my cell phone from my computer. I'm sorry. I can't turn it off. Okay. The story goes like that. There was the Countess of Cinchona, originally from Spain, and she had married the Viceroy of Peru. When she was living in Peru, she contracted a fever. That fever wouldn't go away for several months. So she was suffering from this fever, and she desperately needed some remedy, and nothing was found. Even though the native tribes knew, they wouldn't share the secret because they wanted to keep it within, and of course, the other historical events, which we are not going to talk about. So somehow, the news about this bark tea reached the Countess of Cinchona, and she tried the tea, and to her surprise, her fever subsided, and she survived miraculously. Because of this reason, later on, when the plant was given a scientific name by Linnaeus, he used the name Cinchona for the genus name. So as per history, when Countess of Cinchona traveled back to Spain, she carried the bark with her with the hope that her physicians could make some medicine out of it. Unfortunately, on the way she died, but the bark reached, and the rest of the world came to know about Cinchona. So quinine was later, and as an alkaloid, separated from the bark. It is quinine is very bitter because it's an alkaloid. It's abundant in the tree bark and usually taken in the form of an infusion to treat high fever. So around this same time, malaria was predominant around the tropics of the world, and they were desperately looking for a cure. So with the help of Jesuit missionaries and with the science that explained the cause of the disease by Ronald Ross at that time, who later received a Nobel Prize for his invention, for his discovery that malaria was not caused by contaminated air as it was believed in that time, but because of female mosquitoes that carried the parasite Plasmodium falciparum. So even though quinine was very effective in treating malaria, it caused many side effects, very severe side effects. So they had to come up with an alternative. So they came up with semi-synthetic chloroquine in 1934 and hydroxychloroquine later on, because because of drug resistance too. And now we have artemisinin from sweet wormwood, and we are still looking for many different sources to cure malaria. Still a prevalent disease in tropics. Tonic water and gin tonic are the different ways of diluting the quinine because it's so bitter, and then taking for various other ailments. Podophyllum peltatum, also known as May apple, a very pretty plant, very soft looking, attractive plant. Anyone would be tempted to touch and handle the leaves and flowers. Also the fruit, because the fruit looks like a size of a lemon, usually yellow in color, turns to red color. So they called it apple, May apple, maybe because it ripens around May, month of May. There are other names to this plant, it's devil's apple. Even though the fruit itself is edible, the rest of the parts, including stems, leaves, flowers, are all toxic. So this grows on forest floors under tall trees with beautiful umbrella-like leaves. So what did we get out of it, and how did we derive the knowledge from tribals, native American tribes? So the tribes have used a sap, like a sticky resin from the underground parts of the plant. They would take it and dry and then make a powder or use it directly around the areas where they had warts, like the skin warts, which is nothing but an accumulation of the tissues, unwanted, because it's a wart. So it would corrode the tissue and remove them. So that was the clue the scientists got after observing the native people, that they can be tried for treating some kind of cancers. Also, around 1800s, the resins, dried resins, were secretly administered by the physicians to remove warts, including genital warts, for patients. The chemical compound is podophyllotauxin. There are many alkaloids included too. It has a mix of alkaloids, glycosides, that is this plant. Podophyllin is referring to the resin part, and the resin contains different types of active compounds. They seem to have a clear anti-mitotic activity. That is what causes the mitosis, the ongoing mitotic divisions cause the accumulation of cells that become a tumor, then the cancer. So this has anti-mitotic activity, anti-cancer activities, and has applications in chemotherapy. Also, when directly applied, they will eat away or corrode away the unwanted tissues. It is extremely poisonous. For this reason, pharmaceuticals have developed semi-synthetic compounds, which are not as harsh as the original chemical from the plant. Two such formulations are teniposide and etoposide. Teniposide is used to treat lymphoma, whereas etoposide has wider applications in all types of chemotherapy. Next one is Dioscorea. Many of you may be familiar with the Dioscorea species because there are 800 species and they are distributed all through the tropics. I picked this plant because it is the first commercial species for steroidal saponins, for providing us with steroidal saponins. So steroidal compounds that formed the basis for birth control pills and oral contraceptives came through the underground parts or tubers from this plant. This is a wild yam. Of course, we also eat some edible yams, that they are not the ones. And people usually mistake that eating yams will have some health effects. That's not true. It is the wild yam. The study on wild yams started with Russell Marker, in 1939, along with a Mexican scientist, biochemist. Together they worked, and then they came up with the extracting compounds like diosgenin from the sapogenic, steroidal sapogenic compounds from the tubers. So many of our modern steroids are manufactured from diosgenin that is extracted from these tubers. So drugs like birth control pills are affordable due to this discovery and extraction. The steroids in the plant could explain its possible effectiveness in some herbal remedies. Capsicum annuum. It may be hard to believe that these plants came from Central and South America, not from India, Sri Lanka, Malaysia, Indonesia, where it is extensively used in culinary practices. Yes, this plant originated in Central and South America and came to the rest of the world after Columbus came over here. So only in 15th century it was introduced to the rest of the world. Vasco da Gama introduced it to Africa and India during his voyages. So historically, Mayans in Mexico, in Central America, have used to treat this, to treat infections. Aztec Indians have used it to treat toothaches, just giving you a clue that it can help in pain relief. In addition to this, there are also the chemical compound, the active compound is capsaicin, and it has applications in arthritis creams, psoriasis treatment of shingles, joint and muscle pain to reduce inflammation. And this is one plant where you can also, the fruits can be eaten. So taken internally and also in the pure form, capsaicin form, it helps reduce stomach ulcer and also regulate blood sugar levels. These are some of the over-the-counter creams and lotions which are applied externally as a lotion or as a patch to relieve tight muscle tension or joint pain. I have summarized some of these phytochemicals and their sources, like going from this horizontal line, you can see the plant source, common name of a plant source, and the plant scientific name we call binomial, genus and species name, and the family and the therapeutic applications. So you can see each one. And these are again from North American plants. To go summary. The summary is in front of you, so I'm not going to read it, but overall we know people from prehistoric times have understood the therapeutic effects of plant products on human health. Native people of all continents have relied on local plants for the treatment of illness through the knowledge passed on from their ancestors. I thank the wealth of information. It was provided by our University of Central Florida Library. And I want to thank Conference Organizing Committee and Dr. Sudarsanam and Dr. Kamal Pereira. It was so nice to be here. I wish that we could meet sometime. Meanwhile, have a wonderful rest of your day and have a wonderful conference. Thank you very much. And I'll see you. Hope to see you sometime. Bye. Hello.